Tonight we drift into the gentle waves of a love story that began beneath the sea and blossomed above it, a tale where moonlight dances on ocean swells, and two hearts find their rhythm in the quiet hours when the world finally exhales. This is the story of Ariel and Eric, told not with the drama of adventure, but with the soft whispers of contentment that come after all the storms have passed. So settle into your pillows, let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to be carried away by the tide of this peaceful tale. Close your eyes and imagine the softest breeze carrying the scent of salt air and summer roses. This story belongs to those quiet moments when love doesn't need to shout to be heard. In the kingdom by the sea, where Prince Eric's castle stood proud against the cliffs, the evening light painted everything in shades of amber and rose gold. The waves below lapped gently at the rocky shore, their rhythm as steady and comforting as a lullaby. From the highest tower of the castle, you could see for miles across the endless blue, where dolphins played in the distance and seabirds glided on invisible currents. Eric stood at his favorite balcony, the one that faced the harbor, where ships came and went like dreams on the horizon. The day had been full of royal duties and meetings with advisors, but now, as twilight settled over his kingdom, he felt that familiar pull toward the water, not the restless yearning he'd once felt, searching for something he couldn't name, but the peaceful contentment of knowing exactly where he belonged. Below in the gardens, Ariel moved between the flower beds with the grace of someone who had learned to walk on land, but still carried the ocean's rhythm in every step. She tended to the night-blooming jasmine, her fingers gentle as she coaxed the white petals open to release their sweet fragrance into the evening air. The gardeners had long since retired, but Ariel loved these quiet hours when she could work alone, surrounded by the symphony of crickets and the distant whisper of waves. She hummed softly as she worked, not the powerful melodies she'd once sung beneath the sea, but something new and gentle, a tune that seemed to weave together the best of both worlds she'd known. The melody drifted up to where Eric stood, carried on the warm breeze, and he smiled at the familiar sound. Even now, months after their wedding, her voice could still stop time for him. Their love had grown into something deeper than the passionate romance of their early days. It had settled into the kind of affection that didn't need grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It lived in the way Eric would leave shells on Ariel's pillow when he returned from morning rides along the beach. It flourished in how Ariel would braid small flowers into Eric's hair when he dozed in the afternoon sun. It bloomed in shared glances across crowded rooms, in the comfortable silence they could share while reading by the fire. Tonight felt different, though there was something in the air, a sense of anticipation that neither could quite name. Perhaps it was the way the stars seemed brighter than usual, or how the ocean appeared to glow with an inner light that made the water look like liquid silver. Whatever it was, both felt drawn to something beyond their usual evening routines. Eric made his way down the winding stone steps, through corridors lined with paintings of his ancestors and tapestries that told stories of the sea. He passed the great hall where they danced at their wedding, the library where they spent rainy afternoons reading to each other, and the morning room where they shared breakfast while planning their days. Each space held memories now, layers of shared moments that had transformed the castle from a grand but lonely palace into something that truly felt like home. In the gardens, Ariel had moved to the fountain at the center of the maze of flower beds. The water bubbled up from a carved stone dolphin, catching the last rays of sunlight and scattering them like diamonds across the pool's surface. She sat on the marble edge, her fingers trailing in the cool water, and for a moment, she looked every bit the mermaid she'd once been. The transformation had never taken away that essential part of her nature, the way she moved with fluid grace and seemed to understand the language of water and wind. When Eric found her there, surrounded by the evening's gentle sounds, in the sweet scent of blooming flowers, his heart did that little skip it had been doing since the first time he'd seen her on the beach. Not the dramatic thunderbolt of first love, but something warmer and more sustaining, like coming home to a fire that had been burning steadily all day. "The jasmine is particularly beautiful tonight," he said softly, settling beside her on the fountain's edge. His voice carried that hint of wonder he always seemed to have when speaking to her, as if he still couldn't quite believe she was real. Ariel looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the first stars that had begun to appear in the darkening sky. "Everything seems more beautiful lately," she replied, her voice carrying that musical quality that made even the simplest words sound like poetry. "Have you noticed how the sunsets have been more vibrant? How the morning light seems to dance differently on the water?" Eric nodded, understanding perfectly what she meant. There had been a richness to their days recently, a sense that they were living inside a particularly lovely dream. "Perhaps it's because we're finally learning to see things the way they truly are," he suggested, reaching over to tuck a strand of her red hair behind her ear. "When you're not searching for something, you notice what's already there." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fountain's gentle spray catch the light from the garden lanterns that the servants had lit along the pathways. The castle behind them glowed warm and welcoming, windows beginning to flicker with candlelight as the household settled into evening routines. Somewhere in the distance, they could hear the soft laughter of the kitchen staff finishing their work for the day, and the gentle clip-clop of horses being led to the stables. "I dreamed of the ocean again last night," Ariel said eventually, her voice dreamy and distant. "But not the way I used to dream of it when I lived there and wanted to be here. This was different. I was swimming through coral gardens I'd never seen before, following schools of fish that sparkled like jewels. And you were there too, somehow breathing underwater as easily as I once did." Eric smiled, remembering his own dreams lately, filled with impossible underwater palaces and the sound of whale songs that seemed to carry messages he almost understood. "I've been dreaming of the sea too," he admitted. "Dreams where I can hear your father's voice calling across great distances and see cities beneath the waves that shine like stars." "Do you think," Ariel asked, turning to face him fully, "that some dreams are more than dreams? That sometimes when we sleep, we visit places that exist somewhere beyond what we can see when we're awake?" It was the kind of question that might have seemed fanciful coming from anyone else, but Eric had learned that Ariel's intuitions about the mysteries of the world were usually worth listening to. She had, after all, bridged two worlds that most people believed could never touch. Her understanding of magic and wonder ran deeper than his, shaped by a childhood spent in realms where the impossible was simply another word for Tuesday. "I think," Eric said carefully, "that there are more kinds of reality than we usually admit, and I think that love might be one of the forces that lets us glimpse them." As if summoned by his words, a gentle breeze stirred the garden, carrying with it the scent of night-blooming cereus from the climbing vines that covered the garden walls. The fountain's spray caught the breeze and sent tiny droplets dancing through the air like fairy dust, each one reflecting the lantern light before disappearing into the gathering darkness. Ariel reached for Eric's hand, intertwining their fingers in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "There's something I want to show you," she said, her voice carrying a note of excited anticipation. "Something I discovered this morning while you were meeting with the harbor master." She led him through the garden paths, past beds of lavender that released their fragrance with every step, around the rose arbor where climbing blooms created a tunnel of sweet perfume, and toward a part of the gardens he rarely visited. This section was wilder, less formally maintained, where the landscaping gradually gave way to the natural cliff face that dropped down to the sea. They followed a narrow path that wound between wild seagrass and patches of hardy coastal flowers that thrived in the salt air. The sound of the waves grew stronger as they walked, no longer the gentle murmur they could hear from the formal gardens, but the fuller voice of the ocean as it met the rocks below. Here, the evening breeze carried stories from distant shores and the calls of seabirds settling into their cliff-top nests for the night. I come here sometimes in the early morning," Ariel explained as they walked, her voice soft so as not to disturb the peaceful atmosphere, "when the mist is still rising from the water and everything feels like it's between sleeping and waking. It reminds me of the twilight zone in the ocean, that place where the light fades but hasn't quite disappeared." The path curved around an outcropping of smooth stone, worn into gentle shapes by centuries of wind and spray. Eric had walked these cliffs many times during his years of searching, always looking toward the horizon for something he couldn't name now. Following Ariel along the familiar route, he felt no urge to scan the distance. Everything he'd been seeking was right here, in the soft sound of her voice and the warmth of her hand in his. They emerged onto a small promontory he'd never noticed before, a natural platform of stone that jutted out just far enough to offer an unobstructed view of the sea. Someone had placed a simple wooden bench there, weathered to a soft gray by the elements, but still sturdy and inviting. Wild roses had grown up around it, their pale pink blooms glowing like small moons in the gathering darkness. "The gardeners told me this spot has been here for generations," Ariel said, settling onto the bench and patting the space beside her. "They say your great-grandfather used to come here to think when the responsibilities of the crown felt too heavy, and your grandmother would bring her embroidery here on summer afternoons." Eric sat beside her, immediately understanding why his ancestors had been drawn to this peaceful refuge. The view was spectacular, but more than that, there was something about the place that invited quiet contemplation. The sound of the waves was perfectly balanced here, loud enough to mask the distant sounds of the castle, but not so overwhelming as to disturb a conversation. The sea breeze carried just enough coolness to be refreshing without being chill. "How did you find it?" he asked, genuinely curious. Ariel had a gift for discovering hidden corners of beauty, places that seemed to reveal themselves only to those who approached with the right kind of attention. "I was following a butterfly," she said with a soft laugh that carried no embarrassment at the whimsical admission. "One of those large blue ones, with silver spots on its wings. It led me along the path, always staying just ahead, never quite letting me catch up. When I reached this spot, it simply vanished." as if it had never been there at all. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the last light of day paint the water in shades of deep purple and midnight blue. The first stars appeared one by one, their light reflecting on the gentle swells that rolled toward shore with hypnotic regularity. A warm peace settled over them both, the kind of contentment that comes not from excitement or achievement, but from being exactly where you belong with exactly the right person. Below them, the waves continued their eternal rhythm, each one different from the last, but part of the same endless dance. Sometimes Eric thought he could see shapes moving beneath the surface, though whether they were dolphins or sea turtles, or simply tricks of the light, he never could tell. Ariel would smile whenever he mentioned these glimpses, as if she knew something he didn't, but was content to let him discover it in his own time. "Do you ever miss it?" Eric asked eventually, the question that had been in his heart since their first quiet evening together, but which he'd never quite dared to voice. "The life you gave up, I mean. The freedom of the ocean, the ability to explore places no one from the surface world will ever see." Ariel considered the question seriously, as she always did when he asked her something important. She watched the waves for a long moment, her expression thoughtful, but not sad. "I miss certain things," she said finally. "I miss the way kelp forests move in the current, like underwater meadows in a breeze. I miss the songs the whales sing to each other across vast distances. I miss the feeling of weightlessness, of being able to swim in any direction and call it home." Eric felt a familiar tightness in his chest, the fear that perhaps he'd been selfish in accepting her sacrifice, that love alone wasn't enough to compensate for all she'd given up. But before the worry could take root, Ariel continued. "But I don't miss the longing," she said, her voice warm with certainty. "I don't miss feeling like something essential was always just out of reach. I don't miss the restlessness that used to keep me swimming endless circles around the same coral reefs. What I found with you isn't a replacement for what I lost. It's something entirely new, something I never could have imagined when I was dreaming of legs and trying to understand what it meant to walk on solid ground." She turned to face him, her eyes bright with starlight and something deeper. "When I was in the ocean, I was always looking up toward a world I couldn't reach. Now that I'm here, I'm not looking anywhere else. I'm just here, with you. And that's enough, more than enough." Eric felt something release in his chest, a tension he hadn't even realized he'd been carrying. "I worried," he admitted, "that someday you'd wake up and realize what you'd given up, and that love wouldn't be enough to make it worthwhile." "Love is never just love," Ariel said softly, reaching up to touch his cheek with fingers that still carried the coolness of the fountain water. "It's also choice and commitment and the daily decision to build something together that neither of us could create alone. When I chose to become human, I wasn't just choosing you. I was choosing the person I could become with you, the life we could build together, the way we could learn to see the world through each other's eyes." As if to emphasize her words, a shooting star streaked across the sky above them, its brief, bright trail reflected in the dark water below. They both saw it at the same time and smiled at the coincidence. Though neither made a wish, they'd learned that the best kind of magic wasn't something you asked for, but something you recognized when it was already happening around you. The night air carried the scent of jasmine from the gardens behind them and salt from the sea before them, a combination that had become the signature fragrance of their life together. Somewhere in the castle, a clock chimed the hour, its deep notes drifting down to where they sat in their private sanctuary between land and sea. "Tell me about the coral gardens," Eric said, settling back against the bench and drawing Ariel closer to his side. "The ones from your dream. What did they look like?" Ariel's voice took on the dreamy quality it always carried when she spoke of the underwater world. But now it was tinged with the contentment of memory rather than longing. "They were unlike anything I'd ever seen in my father's kingdom. The coral grew in perfect spirals, like frozen whirlpools, and each formation was a different color. Some were deep purple, like wine, others bright orange, like sunset. The fish that swam among them had scales that seemed to hold light inside them, so they glowed from within like tiny lanterns." Eric closed his eyes, letting her words paint pictures in his mind. He could almost see the impossible gardens she described, could almost feel the warm current that would carry them through groves of living sculpture. Were there others there? Other merpeople? "No," Ariel said thoughtfully. "It was just us, and somehow that felt right, as if we'd found a place that existed just for us, where we could be together in ways that wouldn't be possible in either of our worlds separately." The peace of the evening settled deeper around them as they talked, sharing dreams and memories in the soft darkness. Above them, the stars grew brighter as the last traces of daylight faded from the western horizon. The sea continued its gentle conversation with the shore, and occasionally they could hear the distant sound of night birds calling from the cliffs. Time seemed to move differently here on their secret promontory, flowing like honey through warm summer air. The castle behind them had grown quiet, windows dimming one by one as the household settled into sleep. Only the lighthouse at the harbor's end still sent its beacon sweeping across the water, a faithful guardian watching over ships that might be sailing through the darkness toward morning. Ariel shifted slightly, tucking her feet beneath her on the bench, and Eric adjusted his position so she could rest more comfortably against his shoulder. The wooden seat had absorbed the day's warmth and released it slowly into the cooling night, creating a perfect cocoon of comfort. Wild honeysuckle growing along the cliff face released its sweet perfume into the evening breeze, mixing with the clean scent of sea air to create something that smelled like contentment itself. "I've been thinking about time lately," Ariel said softly, her voice barely louder than the gentle splash of waves against the rocks below. "How it moves so quickly in the ocean, where seasons meant little, and years passed like schools of fish, always in motion. But here, with you, it's different. Some moments stretch out like lazy summer afternoons, and others pass by so gently I barely notice them leaving." Eric understood exactly what she meant. There had been evenings when they'd sat by the fire, reading, or simply watching the flames dance, and he'd looked up to find hours had passed without his notice. Other times, like now, each minute felt precious and distinct, something to be savored rather than simply experienced. "It's as if we've learned to live inside the moments, instead of always moving toward the next one," he mused. A gentle splash from below drew their attention to the water, where a family of dolphins had appeared in the moonlight. They moved in graceful arcs through the silver-touched waves, their sleek bodies creating trails of phosphorescence that glowed briefly before fading back into darkness. One of the dolphins, smaller than the others, leaped completely clear of the water in a display of pure joy, spinning once before disappearing beneath the surface with barely a ripple. "They're playing," Ariel observed with delight, leaning forward to get a better view. "Look how the little one keeps trying to jump higher than the adults. It reminds me of when I used to race my sisters through the kelp forests, always trying to prove I could swim faster or dive deeper. Eric watched her face as she observed the dolphins, noting how her expression had grown soft with affection, rather than the wistful sadness such sights had once brought. She spoke of her underwater family with warmth now, sharing memories like treasured photographs rather than wounds that wouldn't heal. The transformation wasn't something that had happened overnight, but a gradual shift he'd witnessed over months of patient love and gentle encouragement. "Do you think they know you're here?" he asked, genuinely curious. Ariel had mentioned before that sea creatures seemed more aware of her presence than they might be of other humans, as if some part of her oceanic nature still called to them across the barrier between worlds. "I think they sense something familiar," she replied thoughtfully. "Not that I'm one of them anymore, but that I carry something of their world with me, like a scent that lingers long after you've left a garden of roses." As if responding to her words, one of the adult dolphins surfaced closer to shore, its intelligent eyes seeming to look directly up at where they sat. It floated there for a long moment, breathing quietly, before diving gracefully back into the depths. The others followed, their dorsal fins disappearing into the moonlit water, one by one, until only the gentle waves remained. Eric found himself thinking about the layers of magic that seemed to surround their life together. Not the dramatic sorcery of fairy tales, but something subtler and more pervasive. The way flowers seemed to bloom more vibrantly in Ariel's presence, how dolphins and seabirds appeared whenever she spent time near the water. The dreams they'd both been having, filled with impossible underwater realms and songs in languages neither had ever learned. "Do you think magic ever really leaves someone?" he asked, the question forming itself as he spoke. "Even when they've chosen to live in a world where it's not supposed to exist?" Ariel considered this, absently braiding her fingers through his as she thought. Her hands were warm now, having long ago lost the constant coolness they'd carried in her first weeks on land. But they still moved with the fluid grace of someone who had once navigated three-dimensional underwater spaces. "I don't think magic is something you have or don't have," she said eventually. "I think it's something you recognize. When I lived in the ocean, I thought magic was the ability to breathe underwater and speak with fish. But now, I think maybe magic is simpler than that." "Like what?" Eric prompted gently, sensing she was working towards something important. "Like the way you knew to listen when I couldn't speak. Like how we can sit together in silence and still feel like we're having the most important conversation of our lives. Like how this bench appeared just when we needed a place to come and watch the stars together." She gestured toward the weathered wood beneath them, worn smooth by generations of hands and warmed by decades of summer suns. "Maybe magic isn't about changing the world. Maybe it's about recognizing the moments when the world changes itself around us." A night-blooming Sirius vine that had wound itself around the bench's armrest chose that moment to open one of its magnificent white flowers, the petals unfurling in slow motion like a dancer's arms reaching toward the stars. The bloom released a fragrance so sweet and complex it seemed to carry messages from distant gardens, from nights when other lovers had sat beneath other stars and marveled at the simple miracle of finding each other in a vast and often lonely world. Eric breathed in the flower's perfume and felt something settle in his chest, a peace so complete it seemed to radiate outward from his heart to fill every corner of his being. "I used to think happiness was something you had to chase, he said softly. Something that lived just over the horizon, always one more adventure away. But this feels different. This feels like happiness that chooses to stay, because it's not built on what might happen or what we hope will happen. Ariel agreed. It's built on what is happening right now, in this moment. The sound of the waves, the scent of night flowers, the feeling of your hand in mine. These things don't require anything from us except the willingness to notice them. They fell into another comfortable silence, but this one felt deeper somehow, as if they'd touched something essential about the nature of contentment itself. The lighthouse beam continued its steady sweep across the water, and somewhere in the distance, a night bird called once before settling back into quiet. The castle behind them seemed to breathe in the darkness, solid and protective, while before them, the ocean stretched toward infinity, vast and full of mysteries they no longer felt compelled to solve. Eric found himself thinking about his ancestors, who had sat in this same spot, facing their own questions and uncertainties. His great-grandfather, weighing the heavy decisions that came with ruling a kingdom. His grandmother, perhaps wondering if the love she'd found would be strong enough to weather the storms that tested all marriages. Each generation had brought their worries and hopes to this peaceful overlook, and the sea had listened with the same patient attention it offered now. I wonder what they would think, he mused aloud. The ones who came before us, whether they could have imagined their descendant would fall in love with a mermaid and find happiness in such a simple thing as sitting together under the stars. Ariel smiled at the thought. I think they would understand better than we might expect. Love is love, whether it happens between two humans or between a human and someone who used to have a tail. The feelings are the same. The choice to build something together, to put another person's happiness alongside your own, to create a life that's richer than what either could have alone. Those things don't change just because one person happens to come from under the sea. A gentle breeze stirred the wild roses that framed their secluded spot, releasing a shower of petals that danced through the air like confetti, celebrating a wedding only the night could see. Some of the petals landed on Ariel's hair, and Eric gently brushed them away, marveling as always at the way moonlight seemed to gather in the strands of red and gold. Tell me what you see when you look at the stars, he said, wanting to hear the world described through her eyes, to understand how someone who had once navigated by coral formations and underwater currents perceived the celestial map that spread above them. Ariel tilted her head back, her gaze traveling across the vast sweep of constellations that wheeled overhead in their ancient patterns. I see connection, she said, after a moment. In the ocean, everything is connected by the water itself. Currents carry messages from one side of the world to the other. The movement of whales in the deep affects the behavior of fish near the surface. Everything touches everything else. When I look at the stars, I see that same kind of connection, but written across an even bigger canvas. She pointed toward a cluster of bright stars near the horizon. Those stars there, they're so far away. Their light left them before I was born, but their light is touching us right now, has traveled impossible distances to reach this exact spot at this exact moment when we happen to be here to see it. That seems like a kind of magic, too. Not the flashy kind that changes princes into beasts or pumpkins into carriages, but the quiet kind that connects every moment to every other moment. Eric followed her gaze, trying to see the night sky through her eyes. It makes our problems seem smaller, he observed. Not unimportant, but smaller, like part of something so vast and beautiful that even our worries become part of the pattern. Exactly, Ariel agreed, settling more comfortably against his side. When I lived underwater and dreamed of the surface world, I thought smallness was something to escape from. I wanted to be part of something bigger, more important, more dramatic. But now I think maybe the magic was in the smallness all along, in choosing to love one person completely, rather than trying to love the whole world incompletely. The night air had grown cooler, carrying with it the scent of morning still hours away. Eric wrapped his arms more securely around Ariel, and she sighed with contentment, the sound blending perfectly with the rhythm of waves against stone. Above them, the stars continued their slow dance across the heavens, and below them, the sea held its ancient conversation with the shore. "We should go inside soon," Eric said, without making any move to leave their peaceful sanctuary. The words were more observation than intention, a gentle acknowledgement that the night was growing deeper and their bed would be warm and welcoming when they finally chose to seek it. "Soon," Ariel agreed, also without stirring. "But not quite yet. I want to watch the moon set first. In the ocean, I could never see the full arc of moonset because there was always water above me, distorting the view. Here, I can watch it sink all the way to the horizon and disappear into the sea, like a silver coin dropped into a wishing well." So they remained where they were, wrapped in each other's warmth and the gentle sounds of the night, waiting for the moon to complete its journey across the star-filled sky. The lighthouse beam continued its faithful sweep. The night flowers continued to release their perfume into the cooling air, and somewhere in the castle behind them, a clock chimed the late hour with deep, resonant notes that seemed to bless, rather than hurry, the peaceful darkness. Time moved like honey through the warm night air as Ariel and Eric remained nestled together on their weathered bench, watching the moon begin its slow descent toward the western horizon. The ancient timepiece seemed to pause in its silver reflection on the water, casting a pathway of light that stretched from where they sat all the way to the edge of the world. The ocean had settled into its deepest rhythm now, each wave arriving with the measured patience of a grandfather clock. The sound was hypnotic, neither urgent nor hurried, just the eternal heartbeat of the sea that had lulled countless generations to sleep. Even the night birds had grown quiet, leaving only the gentle whisper of wind through the wild roses and the soft breathing of two people who had found perfect contentment in each other's presence. Ariel shifted slightly, drawing her legs up onto the bench and tucking them beneath the folds of her evening dress. The fabric was a soft blue that seemed to capture moonlight in its weave, and when she moved, it rustled like gentle waves against a sandy shore. Eric adjusted his position to accommodate her, his arm tightening around her shoulders in a gesture that had become as natural as breathing. "Look," she whispered, pointing toward the water, where a school of flying fish had suddenly burst from beneath the surface. Their silver bodies caught the moonlight as they soared through the air in graceful arcs before disappearing back into the dark water with barely a splash. They're like shooting stars that chose to live in the sea instead of the sky. Eric smiled at her poetic observation, marveling, as he often did, at the way she could find magic in the simplest natural phenomena. Her perspective had been shaped by years of living in an underwater realm where the impossible was commonplace, but she'd never lost her sense of wonder at the everyday miracles that surrounded them on land. If anything, her appreciation had grown deeper, informed by the knowledge of how rare and precious such moments of beauty truly were. The flying fish appeared again, this time in greater numbers, creating a brief constellation of silver against the dark water. Some leaped individually, while others moved in synchronized groups that rose and fell like living waves. A few of the smaller fish seemed to hang in the air longer than physics should have allowed, their fins spread wide like gossamer wings as they caught updrafts from the warm ocean surface. "I wonder what they're celebrating," Eric mused, watching the display with the same quiet awe he felt whenever witnessing something unexpectedly beautiful. Or perhaps they're simply joyful for the sake of being joyful. "Maybe they know something we don't," Ariel suggested, her voice carrying that dreamy quality it took on when she was thinking about the mysteries that connected all living things. "Maybe they can sense something wonderful approaching, something that makes them want to dance between the elements." As if summoned by her words, a gentle phosphorescence began to appear in the water below, turning each wave crest into a line of soft, blue-green light. The phenomenon wasn't unusual in these waters during certain seasons, caused by tiny sea creatures that glowed when disturbed. But tonight it seemed particularly magical. The entire surface of the ocean began to shimmer with an inner light, as if someone had scattered liquid starlight across the waves. Eric had seen this bioluminescence before during his years of sailing, but never quite like this. Usually, it appeared in brief flashes when ships cut through the water or dolphins played in the surf. Tonight, it seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, creating patterns that almost looked intentional, like a vast underwater aurora, painting itself across the sea. "It's singing," Ariel said softly, and Eric realized she was right. The glowing water seemed to pulse in harmony with some unheard melody, the light growing brighter and dimmer in waves that matched the gentle rhythm of the sea itself. "Can you hear it? Not with your ears, but with something deeper." Eric closed his eyes and listened, not just with his hearing, but with the part of himself that had always felt most at home near the water. Gradually, he became aware of something that wasn't quite sound, but wasn't quite silence either. A vibration that seemed to come from the ocean itself, as if the sea were humming a lullaby to the sleeping world above. "I think I can," he said wonderingly. "It's like the ocean is breathing, and each breath creates light instead of air." They sat in reverent silence, watching the phosphorescent display paint ever-changing patterns on the water's surface. Sometimes the light formed spirals that reminded Eric of nautilus shells. Other times it spread in concentric circles, like ripples from an enormous stone dropped into a cosmic pond. The beauty was mesmerizing, but also deeply peaceful, the kind of natural spectacle that invited meditation rather than excitement. A shooting star chose that moment to streak across the sky above them, its bright trail perfectly mirrored by a sudden burst of bioluminescence in the water below. For an instant, it seemed as if the heavens and the sea were engaged in their own private conversation, exchanging messages written in light across the vast darkness that separated them. "Make a wish," Eric said automatically, then immediately felt foolish for the childish suggestion. But Ariel squeezed his hand and closed her eyes briefly, her lips moving silently as she made some private request of the universe. When she opened her eyes again, they sparkled with mischief and contentment. "What did you wish for?" he asked, unable to suppress his curiosity. "More nights exactly like this one," she replied without hesitation. More moments when time slows down and the world shows us its secret face. More chances to sit with you and watch magic happen all around us without having to chase it or earn it or prove we deserve it. Eric felt his heart expand. With such tenderness, he thought it might overflow. "I think that's the most perfect wish anyone has ever made," he said, bringing her hand to his lips for a gentle kiss. "And I think it's already coming true." The moon had continued its stately progress across the sky while they watched the light show below. And now it hung lower on the horizon, its reflection creating a golden highway across the phosphorescent water. The combination of moonlight and bioluminescence turned the sea into something that belonged more in dreams than in waking life. A canvas painted with silver and blue-green that seemed to pulse with its own heartbeat. Ariel nestled deeper into Eric's embrace, her head finding the perfect spot on his shoulder, where she could watch both sky and sea without straining her neck. Her hair smelled of jasmine and sea salt, a combination that had become as familiar and comforting to Eric as his own heartbeat. He could feel the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the way it had gradually synchronized with his own over the months of sleeping side by side. "Tell me about your favorite place in your father's kingdom," he said softly, wanting to hear her voice weave stories in the peaceful darkness, "somewhere you haven't told me about before." Ariel was quiet for so long. He thought she might have drifted off to sleep, but then she began to speak in the dreamy, musical tone she used when describing the underwater realm of her childhood. There was a place where warm currents from the deep ocean met cold streams from the polar seas. The water there was always moving, always changing temperature, and it created these incredible formations of ice and coral that would appear and disappear like sculptures made of dreams. Eric closed his eyes, letting her words paint pictures in his mind of impossible underwater landscapes shaped by the marriage of opposing forces. "It sounds beautiful," he murmured, "but what made it truly special," Ariel continued, "was the way sound traveled there. The different water temperatures created layers that would carry voices and songs for incredible distances. Whales would come from all over the ocean to sing there because their calls could reach further than anywhere else in the sea. Sometimes I would hide in the coral formations and listen to conversations between creatures who were thousands of miles apart. Like an underwater amphitheater," Eric suggested, enchanted by the image of his beloved as a young mermaid, hidden among living corals while eavesdropping on the ocean's secrets. "Exactly. And now, sitting here with you, listening to the sea whisper against the cliffs, I realize that every place can be like that, if you know how to listen properly. The magic isn't in the location. It's in the willingness to pay attention to what's already there." A night heron called from somewhere along the cliff face, its voice carrying clearly in the still air. The sound was answered by another bird further down the coast, and then another, until a chain of calls stretched along the shoreline like a message being passed from sentinel to sentinel. The birds weren't alarmed, Eric realized, but simply maintaining contact through the peaceful darkness, each one assuring the others that all was well in their section of the night. "Even they understand about connection," Ariel observed sleepily. "Everything in nature seems to know that isolation is the exception, not the rule. Trees share nutrients through their root systems. Birds migrate in flocks. Fish swim in schools. Even the stars cluster together in constellations. We're all part of something larger than ourselves." Eric found himself thinking about the networks of connection that had brought them together. The storm that had shipwrecked him near Ariel's home waters, the chain of events that had led to her saving his life, the dreams and longings that had prepared both their hearts to recognize love when it finally appeared. None of it had been planned or orchestrated by human hands, yet it had unfolded with the precision of a symphony written by some cosmic composer. "Do you think," he asked quietly, "that some things are meant to happen, not in a way that takes away our choice, but in a way that prepares the world for certain possibilities?" Ariel considered this question with the same thoughtful attention she gave to all matters of the heart and spirit. "I think the world is always creating opportunities for connection and love and beauty," she said finally. "But we have to choose to see them and act on them. The storm could have killed you instead of washing you to shore. Near where I happened to be swimming, I could have been too frightened to save you. You could have convinced yourself that the voice you remembered was just a dream. But at each step, we chose love over fear, connection over isolation." The phosphorescence in the water below had begun to fade as the microscopic creatures settled back into quiescence, but the moon's reflection remained bright and steady, creating a silver path that seemed to lead directly to where they sat. The night air carried the scent of cooling stone and night-blooming flowers, while somewhere in the castle behind them, a dog barked once before settling back into sleep. Eric realized that his own eyelids were growing heavy, not with the restless fatigue that came from a day of unfulfilled activity, but with the deep, satisfied tiredness that followed perfect contentment. His body felt warm and relaxed, every muscle at ease, while his mind had settled into the kind of peaceful clarity that came only in moments of complete presence. "The moon is almost ready to set," Ariel murmured against his shoulder, though she made no move to sit up straighter or prepare for their eventual departure. "It's been such a perfect night for watching it complete its journey across the sky." "The most perfect night," Eric agreed, his voice soft with approaching sleep and overflowing gratitude. "I'll remember this always. The way the stars reflected in the water, the sound of the waves finding their rhythm, the feeling of having you here beside me while the whole world settled into peaceful dreams." They remained in their comfortable embrace, neither wanting to break the spell by suggesting they return to the castle's warm chambers. The wooden bench had absorbed their body heat and held it like a blessing, creating a cocoon of warmth in the cooling night air. Wild honeysuckle continued to release its sweet perfume, while the gentle sound of waves against stone provided a lullaby that seemed composed specifically for this moment, this place, this perfect convergence of love and moonlight and the eternal patience of the sea. Above them, the stars wheeled slowly through their ancient patterns, each constellation telling stories of love that had endured across impossible distances and countless centuries. Below them, the ocean held its own memories, carrying within its depths the echoes of every song ever sung by those who loved the sea. And between sky and water, wrapped in each other's arms, in the gentle blessing of a night that felt touched by magic, Ariel and Eric found themselves drifting toward dreams that would be filled with silver light and the sound of waves whispering secrets to the shore. The lighthouse beam continued its faithful sweep across the darkened waters, a guardian's blessing over all who traveled through the night toward morning. And in their secret garden above the sea, two hearts beat in perfect synchronization with the rhythm of the waves, creating their own gentle music in the soft darkness where moonlight danced with starlight in love made everything luminous as the moon touched the edge of the horizon, painting the water with ribbons of molten silver. Ariel felt herself being gently pulled toward the realm of sleep. Not the heavy, sudden drop into unconsciousness, but that soft, gradual surrender that comes when every part of you feels perfectly at peace. Eric's breathing had grown slow and steady beneath her cheek, his chest rising and falling with the same gentle rhythm as the waves below. The night had wrapped itself around them like the finest silk, warm and protective, carrying on its breath the mingled fragrances of sea roses and salt air. Somewhere in the castle gardens behind them, a nightingale began its evening song, the pure notes floating through the darkness like liquid music. The melody seemed to weave itself into the sound of the waves, creating a lullaby that belonged to both land and sea. "Listen," Ariel whispered, though her voice was barely louder than the rustle of rose petals in the breeze. "Even the birds know this is a night for gentle dreams." Eric's arm tightened slightly around her, a sleepy gesture of contentment and protection. "Everything tonight seems to understand something we're only just learning," he murmured, his words soft with approaching slumber. "That the most beautiful moments don't need to be chased or captured. They just need to be lived." The phosphorescence had faded from the water now, leaving only the moon's steady glow to light their way through the darkness. But somehow, the sea seemed even more magical in its simplicity, each wave catching and releasing the silver light-like hands, gently tossing coins into a fountain. The rhythm was hypnotic, neither hurried nor delayed, just the eternal heartbeat of the ocean, keeping time with their own quiet breathing. A gentle breeze stirred the wild roses that framed their secluded spot, sending a shower of petals dancing through the air like confetti, celebrating a wedding only the night could witness. The petals landed on their hair and shoulders before drifting away on currents of warm air that carried the promise of peaceful dreams and morning sunshine still hours away. Ariel found herself thinking about the stories the waves might tell if they could speak in words instead of whispers. Tales of distant shores and deep ocean mysteries, of sailors guided safely home by lighthouse beams, and lovers who sat on cliff tops watching stars be born. Each wave that reached the rocks below carried within it the memory of every place it had been, every shore it had touched, every dreamer who had watched it pass by in the moonlight. "Do you suppose," she said softly, her voice growing drowsy as the night's peace settled deeper into her bones, "that the waves remember us after they've moved on? That somewhere in the ocean's memory, there's a record of this perfect night in the way we felt watching the moon set together?" Eric smiled in the darkness, charmed by her poetic imagination and the way she could find meaning in the simplest natural phenomena. "I think the ocean remembers everything," he replied, his own voice thick with contentment and approaching sleep. "Every sunset it's reflected, every prayer whispered by those who love the sea, every moment of joy shared by people who understand its beauty. We're part of that memory now, part of the ocean's collection of perfect evenings." And so, as the moon finally kissed the horizon and disappeared into the silver embrace of the sea, Ariel and Eric remained wrapped in each other's arms in the gentle blessing of a night that would live forever in their hearts. The waves continued their eternal lullaby. The stars kept their faithful watch. In love made everything luminous in the soft darkness, where dreams and reality danced together like moonlight on water. Let their peaceful contentment carry you now into your own gentle dreams, where the ocean whispers secrets and every breath brings deeper rest.